Welcome to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. If you're crazy about chickens, then you're in the right place. It's a warm summer evening. You're in the backyard, parked in the shade with a cold drink, just watching your chickens hunt around for something tasty. They've been waiting all day for you to get home and let them out of the run so they can stretch their legs and have some fun before bed. And, if they're lucky, maybe get some cold watermelon scraps tossed their way. After grinding through another long day, trying to keep the kids entertained while they're out of school, and keeping up with all the other demands of life, you've finally got some time to yourself to just relax and enjoy the peace of watching your chickens just do their thing. It's a perfect evening. But just as you think to yourself that maybe it's time to quit your job and take up work as a stay-at-home chicken keeper, you hear your rooster send out the unmistakable cry of danger. Everyone freezes. Your rooster calls out again, and this time, the girls know it's time to take cover. Your flock makes a dash for their run, frantically scrambling to get back to the place they feel safe and protected. Hens are tripping and running into each other, clucking up a storm as they race for the coop door. And of course, there's always that one that's late to come in. And just before she's able to get herself back under cover, a dive-bombing hawk swoops down with all intention of taking her home for dinner. But your rooster never goes in until he knows everyone is safe. He stood his ground, ushering his hens to safety while waiting for the stragglers. And just before that hawk is able to get his talons around what he thinks is going to be his next meal, your boy comes flying in, throwing himself between the hawk and his favorite hen, ready to fight to the death if that's what it takes to protect his flock. He might have taken some injuries in this fight, maybe even worse, but the hawk was scared off by the sound of you falling out of your chair, spilling your drink, and running at him full speed, swinging a rake and screaming to get out of here. Another near miss. And it reminds you that as much as you enjoy letting your girls run around the backyard, they're constantly being watched by something that wants to make a meal out of them. Back when you first brought those chicks home, you never would have guessed there'd be so many dangers lurking right there in your backyard. You'd lived in the neighborhood for years, never having to deal with possums sneaking around in the bushes or danger flying in from above. Maybe you've dealt with a couple of trash pandas making a mess of your garbage cans in the middle of the night, but now it seems like your flock is constantly under attack, and the attempts to break into your coop are becoming way too common. So, who are these urban predators, and how can we keep them out of our coops? Let's start with some of the most common threats that you and your chickens might encounter in your neighborhood. First up, rats. While you might not think of rats as being a threat to full-grown chickens, they can be devastating to baby chicks that might be living in your coop. And they'll happily go after those eggs if given the opportunity. And if they have easy access to those eggs or your chicken's food supply, you can bet that they'll be coming back. Now, that's not to say they won't go after some of your hens too, especially one that appears to be an easy target, like a sick or an injured bird, or maybe some of the smaller ones in the flock if you keep bantams. But for the most part, they're looking for the easiest meal possible. If you remember Templeton from Charlotte's Web, he represents the rat community pretty accurately. Rats were built for survival, and they'll do just about anything to get to a food source. They're excellent climbers, so you're not going to be able to keep them out with just a tall fence. And they can dig through just about anything, squeezing themselves through openings you would never imagine an animal would get through. And besides the fact that they'll eat your chicken's eggs, their food, their babies, whatever they can get their nasty little rat paws on, they're also known to carry diseases that can affect your flock. It's not an animal you want coming around your house. And you definitely don't want to have to explain to your neighbors that the rats now living in their backyard are there because of you. So let's talk about some of the ways to keep them as far away from you and your chickens as possible. First place to start, keeping your chickens' feed in a rat-proof container. Metal bins with tight-fitting lids seem to work the best. I probably wouldn't believe this if I hadn't seen it myself, but I was actually having problems with mice getting into the large plastic trash cans that I was using for their feed. I can't really imagine how they got in there. The lid was on. I opened it up. There they are. And if mice can get in there, I think rats can probably do it too. Maybe even easier. And on some of those ones that are made of pretty thin plastic, a rat can chew a hole right through that. You may even have to consider just feeding your chickens enough food to last them through the day if the rats are coming around and hitting those feeders at night. It can be a pain, but that's one way to be sure that there's not a ready supply of food out there to tempt them. Eliminating hiding spots or potential nesting areas can also help. The only thing worse than knowing a rat is hitting your feeder every night is knowing they just have a short walk back to bed after that. And you need to make sure that that coop and run are just as tight as they can possibly be. It takes a lot of attention to detail to keep something that small out, especially something that can burrow under a wall. But if you have hardware cloth buried or aproned out around the coop and the run, with everything else sealed up, that's going to go a long way. And of course, using traps. If you make it really hard for rats to get into your coop, keep all the food locked up and secure, and then can manage to trap or kill some of the ones that do come around, I mean, they're not totally dumb. They're gonna eventually move on and find an easier place to get food. Okay, moving on to hawks and owls. These are another animal that's pretty common in most urban areas that can pose a real threat, as we saw in our opening story. These predators are swift and silent. If they're planning an attack on your chickens, there's not much you can do about it if you haven't set up any defenses ahead of time. I do have some tips for how you can effectively protect your chickens from them, and we're going to get into those now. But just let me say, do not try to kill them. For one, it's illegal. I see people suggest all the time in chicken groups that a 12 gauge is the best repellent for hawks and owls. These birds are protected, and if you get caught trying to kill them, you're going to be in some real trouble. Plus, they're awesome animals. We have 3 barn owls that live on our property in some owl boxes that have been around here for years. Almost every night, I can go outside, listen to them make circles around the property. They probably fly over an area about 4 or 5 acres hunting for their dinner, scooping up the mice and the snakes, and helping to keep the rodent population under control. It's pretty amazing to see one of them fly right over your head, just how big they are. I definitely don't want them going after my chickens or getting eyes on a clutch of chicks that they would see as a plate of hors d'oeuvres, but that just means that it's up to me to keep my birds safe, not to eliminate these animals that are an important part of the local ecosystem. So how do we do that? Well, covered runs are a great place to start. Keeping that space covered with fencing or a full roof will keep them well protected when you're away, so that you can feel confident they're still going to be around when you get home. But when you do want to let them out to stretch their legs, you're going to need something else to keep them safe. Providing plenty of hiding spots in your yard, like bushes or small shelters, places they can run to and take cover when they need to. Roosters are really helpful in keeping your girls safe. A good rooster pretty much lives his life to protect and care for what he would consider his flock. And while everyone else is scratching around looking for worms, he's going to keep at least one eye on the sky, looking out for any kind of threat, and alerting the flock when there is danger, even fighting off attackers if it comes to it. If you've never seen it, there's a ton of videos on YouTube that you can check out, and it's pretty cool to see. I love watching a rooster when he finds a little morsel and calls his hens over to come and get some. Just seeing how much they care for their girls and how they put their needs and safety first is just a really cool thing to see. Another option for securing a large area is aviary netting. There is this plastic poultry netting too that can work. I mean, it's definitely cheaper, but it can be hard to work with, and it doesn't hold up great in the sun. You may find yourself having to replace it maybe every year. But the woven string netting is great. It's easy to hang, you can easily cover large areas with a single piece, and you can order it in a ton of sizes. And it's not like you need to cover every inch of the yard. As long as you have the majority of it covered, pretty likely those birds won't try to fly underneath it. They want to swoop in, grab their target, and fly right on through. So you're just trying to create a barrier to make that more difficult. There's some other products available. I haven't used it, Just not sure how effective it would be trying to cover really large areas. But there's a little device that puts out an ultrasonic sound wave that will keep certain animals away. I can't say exactly how well they work or how much people can really hear them, but if the other things we talked about just aren't an option for you, you might check these out. In fact, I'll put a few links in the notes if you want to look at those. As for the other predators you might face in urban areas, not going to get into super detail on these, but raccoons, neighbors' dogs that might have a little too much freedom to roam, even some house cats or feral cats can all be a problem. All of these can be guarded against by having a secure coop and run, ideally using hardware cloth to keep them from reaching in. And raccoons will definitely do this. If they can get their little paws through that fence, they're eventually going to get a hold of one of your chickens and pull whatever they can through. It's pretty messed up. Dogs can be a tough one. All you can really do is make sure that your run will keep them out. People who keep free-ranging flocks know that a neighbor's dog with a taste for chicken is going to keep coming around, and they don't just kill for food. If there's a dog that roams around your yard, probably just have to keep your chickens closed in when you're not around. And don't underestimate cats, especially feral cats. We used to have this barn cat that came with the house back when we bought it. He was probably the meanest animal I had ever come across. We eventually had to ask the previous owner to come and take him back. But that wasn't until after he had killed a few of our silkies. I wouldn't have been all that surprised if they were just chicks, but these were full-grown birds. And he actually had the strength to carry that chicken out of the barn stall they were in, which meant that he had to jump up and through this opening that was a good 4 feet off the ground with that bird in tow. Now, for the most part, if your coop is tight enough to keep rats out, you shouldn't have to worry about a cat getting in there either. When you need to be on the lookout is when your chickens are outside of their run free-ranging. Cats are crafty and they enjoy hunting. Chickens left unattended can easily fall victim to a hungry stray. So if you know there's a few that do feel comfortable coming into your yard, you probably need to treat them just like dogs and keep an eye on your chickens when they're outside of the run. There is some cool little solar-powered, motion-activated sprinklers that are meant to go off and spray a cat that gets too close, but that really only works when your chickens are penned up anyways. Otherwise, I think they would be the ones getting sprayed. Now, after you've set up all the protective measures you can and feel pretty good about it, it is a good idea to establish a daily routine for safety checks. Securing the coop at night, checking for any signs of an attempted break-in. Those critters will help you find the weak spots in your security, and it'll be the first spot that they attack again the next time. Make sure their food is secure, and supervise them during free-range time. It can be really hard to keep chickens safe, and it's usually about the time you start feeling like you've got it all figured out that something happens. But staying on top of it, maintaining your coop's security, and knowing who your enemy is will help out. You know, I mentioned bantams a couple of times and how because of their size, they make an easy target for predators. Well, I plan to do a full episode soon of some of the more special care practices that these little mini chickens need. And I'm planning for it to be the first interview show I've done since way back when I started. The breeder who I go to for all my silkies and saramas has volunteered to share everything she's learned from raising these little pocket-sized fluff butts for the past decade. And she's just waiting for me to set it up. Unfortunately, though, just like NASA supposedly losing the data they used to get to the moon, I need to refigure out how to host and record interviews. I hated the audio quality I did on the others, so I just want to find a better way to do it this time around. So keep an eye out for that one. I know I've seen a lot of emails from you guys that also have a lot of bantams, and I love them, so I'm excited to do a full episode on them. And hopefully that'll be sooner than later. I wanted to say thank you to all of you that did go and check out the YouTube page and help grow the show audience. I do appreciate the support. You guys keep those chickens cool this week. It is going to be a hot one, and I'll talk to you again soon.